Hey guys, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. I'm the owner and the managing editor of the Maxfield Report, and this is our weekly market recap for the week ending November the 15th. This week started out with big packer hides with offer lists for the most part that looked unchanged with the past several weeks. The overall opinions of the trade is that packers continue to possess decent to strong sold forward positions. But with the kills coming in at 650,000 on a weekly basis, the Packers look like they're just trying to stay ahead of these higher volumes, and that's why they're offering so many hides. As far as interest this week, the general consensus of the trade was it followed the usual pattern. Things got off to a sluggish start. The majority of buyers who are willing to share their price ideas continue to bid at levels lower than the last traded levels. Packers immediately are countering at full asking price. Bids did pick up towards the second half of the week as expected, but the overall sentiment of the trade is that there wasn't as many bids this week as there's been the past few weeks on big packer hides. So I'm not saying that things are slowing down. It's just maybe there's some buyers taking the time to pause and reflect on the market just to see what they want to do going forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. The last say 3 weeks, sales have fallen just a shade short of the harvest. So, of course, you always want to stay even or selling more, especially if you want to keep the market steady to push it higher. But right now, overall, that tone of that market is steady. The reports we hear is that business all done at steady levels, nothing lower. But by God, you try to get a nickel more in these hides, it's really tough. And packers just don't seem as if they're really committed. They don't have a problem asking. They just seem like they're not willing to stick with it for a long length of time. How's that? On the cow hides, a little bit better interest the last couple of weeks. We've been telling you the African swine fever is part of this. The leather lighting buyers cannot get enough pig skins. There's a lot of pigs being destroyed in Asia, many parts of Southeast Asia actually, and also in Europe. So these guys have had to come in. The lower grades are getting cleaned up. Everyone's talking about, the lowest prices of the year are behind them. Prices up maybe from the lows, maybe $1 or $2, depending on the selection, maybe even a little more, depending on what part of the world you're at, all that kind of good stuff there. But overall, this last week, the processors entered with large offers, feeling a little better about the market, feeling like they had a little bit of momentum going. They actually even tried to get a little bit more money, and lo and behold, they were able to eke out some incremental increases. I heard of some guys who were jokingly, telling us that, hey, we can finally get double digits delivered for branded cows, something we haven't been able to do for months. So that's great news for people in the cowhide trade. On the harvest, last week the harvest came in at 657,000. That compares to 651 the week prior and 648 the same week last year. Overall, we are still about just a shade over 300,000 ahead of last year. That's 1.1%. We've been telling you all along, look for 1 to 1.5% from here until the end of the year. This is where we're going to make up a lot of that. We're probably going to end the year somewhere about 1.3. We might challenge a 1.4. We're just running out of time to get to a 1.5, or else we'd be there. Packers are making, according to the people that count their money, they're at about $350 ahead this week. And worth noting, this is the 9th time in the last 13 weeks Packers have margins that are exceeding $300 ahead. Little side note for you, the pig packers last week supposedly made as much as $85 ahead, and that would be an all-time record. And all of this, in my opinion, and many others, is because of that African swine fever problem in China. China doesn't have enough protein to feed their population. That's why you're seeing them reopening markets in Europe, Brazil. They're even allowing chicken coming in from the United States now. So that's where, this trade agreement, I think, is going to get signed between the U.S. and China. It's going to be a good boost. A lot of demand for beef is better than anyone expected. Even the most optimistic of optimists guess, it's still way higher than that. So good news for the Packers there. Export report last week. Whole cattle hide sales, let's call it 510,000, rounded up just a smidge on wet salted hides, that is. Exports of 495,000. Wet blue sales 94,000. Exports 112,000. Overall, a neutral report. As we mentioned earlier, the total sales don't quite measure up to what we harvested last week. That is a trend that's been happening the last 2-3 weeks, so we need to keep an eye on it. But the big, I guess the elephant in the room, for lack of a better description, is the sales to China last week in wet salted hides. 382,300 hides. 75% of the total, folks. China has bought 1.3 million hides in the last 4 weeks. We've looked back, we can't find another 4-week period where China bought so many hides. So the debate comes in. Are they buying because they have business? Are they buying to get hides ahead? Maybe a little bit of both, but end of the day, I've been contending for quite some time that business is better than what tanners are telling us. As an example, if you would see my report from Friday, weekly average sales, 555,000 this year. That's combined. Okay, that's a weekly average. Compared to last year, 516,200. So we are selling almost 40,000 more hides a week than we did last year. Of course, you're going to say, Ken, harvest numbers are higher. Yes, they are. They're only up 8,000. So net gain, 32,000 on sales. I'm not trying to cheer the market higher, but I'm here to tell you, folks, business is better than what you're thinking. Automotive business still a little stagnant. We understand that, but that's only 18-20% of the overall business. So keep an eye on that. I said I'll back it up. I get my report, take a look at the figures. You can see it for yourself. Real quick around the globe, because I know this has gone a little long. Europe's reporting a very similar situation as to the States. A little bit higher prices across the board for most selections, especially cow hides. They are getting into their big harvest time now, so there's more coming at them. But with the way the demand has been coming in, predominantly from China, not so much from the European tanners, they're able to hold prices steady, if not eke out some incremental increases. Australia, prices are up there. Sources are telling us anywhere from $1.50 to $3 a hide, depending on the type of selection, where it's coming from in the country, and who's selling it. But good news for them, it's going higher. They've got some fires going on down in Australia. That's kind of taken their harvest numbers down, which isn't a bad thing the fires, of course, horrible, but they had such drought-like conditions. So you're going to see some smaller numbers down there, a little bit more interest from China. That's what's helping them to get a little bit, more money. And it seems like there's, again, a little better demand. Brazil, we're hearing that there's been movement. There's been sales on some of the lower grades. Nobody getting any more money yet. But you know what? The way this whole thing's going, with everybody else starting to push prices higher, especially on the cows, you would think that Brazil may follow sometime here in the near future, right? So that's it for this week. Check out my website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. I offer free 14-day trials. I'm happy to tell you what's going to happen next week, but you got to log into the website to find out. Until next week, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy.